Hello, amazing, awesome, fantastic Delight leaders.
It's us again.
It's us again. Today we are talking all about how to lead your weekly Delight meeting. Again, this is really the heart of Delight. So we just want to hone in on some details, some things that you don't want to miss when it comes to your weekly meeting. So first things first, again, this should be as consistent as possible. The same time, same place. Consistency in ministry is so huge. If you change it up, people are going to stop coming. So make sure it's consistent. First things first, have people at the door. Have a welcoming committee, cheering everybody in, woo! Welcome to Delight! No, but have people warmly welcoming. Maybe have snacks if you can. You don't have to. Maybe some meetings you do. And this is the first beginning of it. Should just be time to hang out and socialize. Just a few minutes. Don't take too long doing this, or else people might just get bored. And then after that, you should sit down together. The key thing is have all the leaders spread out within the meeting. You don't want everybody sitting up front. That just looks like you own the place or something and is a little intimidating when it comes to facilitating conversation. So have the leaders spread out. It feels a little bit more natural that way. Also be sure at the beginning that people are being introduced to others. Don't let anybody go sitting alone or standing alone for more than 1 second. Run over there. Make everybody feel welcome. And then once everybody's sitting down, you should just do some quick announcements. If there's anything going on within the Delight community, make sure that everybody's aware of this. You also might want to spend some time just talking about the books. Again, you can always have them available to purchase at the back. Maybe also introduce some new people. Have anybody raise their hand if they're new and have everybody welcome them. This is your first beginning, just warm introduction to Delight.
Yeah, I always say don't make the assumption that people know what's going on. You always want to almost over-describe, over-explain everything because there's always probably going to be new people coming each week and you never know if they're confused about what's going on. So just be sure to do that every single week, consistently say, hey, this is Delight, this is what we do, and this is how you can be more involved and a bigger part of Delight.
Yeah.
So once you've done all this, it is time to jump into the actual Bible study part. So, like we talked about in the weekly leadership meetings, you will have chosen one leader to kind of lead the discussion that week. So this person will get up front and the first thing they'll want to do is summarize the story. So this should be super simple, super quick, maybe 3 to 4 minutes, just for people who maybe needed a refresher on what they read that week for Delight. But they'll just kind of share what the story was about and what were the biggest topics or takeaways from that story. And then the next and the most important part is what we call leading with vulnerability. So they're simply going to share how did they relate to that story. And they're going to be vulnerable with this. They're going to say, hey, I really related with this because this is how I've experienced that in my life. And it's not pretty, it's kind of messy, but God still taught me something through this. So we want the leader, whoever's leading that week, to be the first one to kind of stand up and say, this is me, this is my story, so that other women in the room feel welcome and feel like they can also share kind of the messy parts of their story too. So it's super important to do this every single week, summarize the story, and then lead with vulnerability. And if you need help with this, we have some awesome leader outlines that help you pull out the main points, pull out some really impactful quotes from the story, and we'll even give you ideas on how you can kind of implement your own story with that story.
Yes. So once you take the first part to do just that, leading with vulnerability and summarizing the story, you'll then open up for discussion. Really, your weekly meeting is supposed to just be like a Christ-centered conversation about your faith. And you can utilize the discussion questions at the end of each story and just start that main leader that was opening and summarizing. We'll just ask the first question, or maybe you have specific points or something that you want to pull out to start the conversation. You can do these conversations in 3 different ways. So you could do one big group discussion where everybody's sitting together in one circle. We love this. I think there's so much boldness in speaking out loud, things that you're going through, especially when they're really real things. I think when you speak it out loud, you just, in a big group, you won't ever forget that. Versus a small group, sometimes you can just walk away and it's like you never really said it. But in a big group, you leave with that on your heart. So that's something really special about the big group. But if your Delight chapter is just really, really big and it's gonna be too hard to facilitate that conversation, you could break up into small groups, and that's the second way to go about it. Just doing it in small groups. Have a leader in each different small group that's helping facilitate the conversation so that it's sort of like monitored. You can keep those groups consistent. Maybe meet in the same group each week, maybe the same group each month and change it up each month. Whatever you want to do, small groups is a really awesome way to go about it. And then the third way is doing just a combination of both things. So maybe the leader that was facilitating the conversation will ask the first question, and then you'll break into like the 2 or 3 people around you to discuss and kind of like introduce, get the brain flowing with the ideas, and then that leader will bring it back to the big group. And as a big group, you'll then talk about it one more time. With that setting, people will probably have a little bit more to share. The conversation might feel a little bit more lively just because they already kind of like debriefed and discussed and could gather their thoughts together. So if you're struggling really with like conversation, you just feel like it's been hard for people to open up or conversation isn't happening naturally, that might be something to go to. It'll feel a little bit more comfortable. So big group, small group, or a combination of both. Feel free to change this up too. It doesn't have to be the same every single week.
Yeah, you'll totally find what works for your community and your chapter, and don't be afraid to even come up with other ways too.
Yeah.
So once you've done summarize a story, once you've led with vulnerability, and once you've had your discussion, then it's really just time to kind of wrap things up. Actually, one cool thing to do is in the leader outlines, there's actually some ideas for ways to just change up your meetings, little activities, or ways just like really drive the message of that week's story in, so you can check out some of those ideas. But sometimes it's good just to leave time for prayer, to leave time for maybe individual time to process, listen to a worship song, let it sink in. You can change this up every single week too, but just wrap things up and then make sure every single week you take the time to pray together as a chapter, as a Delight community. It can be one leader praying over everybody. It can be a popcorn prayer. There's so many different ways to pray, which is so cool. But be sure to do that every single week, and then just wrap everything up. Maybe share those last few little announcement reminders. Maybe you're picking Delight dates at this time, and then dismiss everybody. Be sure to be respectful of people's time. However long your meeting is, if it's an hour and a half, try to stay as close to that as possible. We've all been to those meetings where it's super frustrating when they run 30 minutes over. So as leaders, just be mindful of that and keep it to the hour or hour and a half, whatever you've set. And yeah, that's everything. It's going to be an awesome meeting. Just follow the structure, utilize those outlines, and get creative with it. Always leave room for the Holy Spirit to lead and to work and to move, but always come prepared, because that's usually when the Holy Spirit moves best. So we're so excited to hear all about your weekly meetings. We know that this is the place where Christ-centered community, where those conversations really start to happen and unfold, and it's going to be amazing.
Amazing.